Hey everyone, welcome to this week's car review. I'm quite excited about this week's car review for a number of reasons. Firstly, this is my first Japanese car, I think, on my channel, and it just happens to be one of my favorite Japanese cars, so bonus. This of course is the Subaru WRX STI. It's the launch edition, it's a 2015, so it's a pretty rare car, well, rare-ish, so that's pretty cool. But before I get into details of the car, I wanted to touch on a couple of things. First of all, I say Subaru, not Subaru, because that's how we say it in the one-horse country that I come from, so anyone that's got a problem with that, I'm sorry. The second thing is I wanted to quickly touch on the type of people that drive this car, because they're some of my favorite people in the motoring community. You know, I always feel happy to approach a WRX driver at the gas station or a car show or whatever, because I know I'm always going to get along with them. You know, unlike a lot of other car makes where there's always a percentage of people that will buy them because of the brand or because they're reliable or economic or any number of 100 reasons for buying a car, people that buy WRXs and STIs in particular are always car enthusiasts and always great people. So yeah, it's one of my favorite areas within the car community, the buyers of this particular car. I always feel quite at home, you know, walking up to them and knowing that we're going to be friends straight away. So anyway, what are we going to do in this review? It's going to be a little different than my other reviews because I want to focus on a couple of things that I don't normally focus on. In particular, this car has something that's pretty unique in the car industry. This has a central diff that you can make changes to, so I'm going to do a bit of a review on that. I'm going to try and find a bit of snow and slide around in the snow and show you that one of the coolest things about this car is that you can make this car almost a rear-wheel drive car if you feel like driving a rear-wheel drive car, or a four-wheel drive, just by pressing on this little button down here. And I think that is awesome. I think all four-wheel drive cars should have that feature. Otherwise, we are going to, first of all, I'm going to take you through the specs, then I'm going to take you for a drive on the highway. Then we're going to take a look around the inside and the outside of the car, and then a summary like I always do. So yeah, sit back, I hope you enjoy this video, and let's get on with the driving. Okay, so what is this car? Well, as I said before, this is the STI launch edition, and it comes with the 2.5 litre boxer engine, which is, I think, a North America engine. I know the Japanese get the 2 litre, and even the WRX gets the 2 litre, much more modern 2 litre. And this is quite an old engine, this EJ series engine. I remember this engine being in my uncle's STI right back in 2004. So this is a plenty old engine, and it shows because it's got terrible fuel efficiency and it's kind of noisy, but it's still very upgradable. I've got a friend at work who's got one of these cars. I think his is a 2010, and he's put a bigger turbocharger in it. And man, when you put your foot down on that car, you think the world's coming to an end. Whoa, you're blasted in the back of your seat, all this noise comes from the engine, you think it's going to blow up, but no, it's just the way, just what happens when you put a bigger turbocharger on these. And you know, and that's part of what an STI is all about. It's an enthusiast car. They almost encourage you to make modifications to them. Anyway, so the specs are in its standard form: 305 horsepower, 290 foot-pounds of torque. It weighs in at about 3,300 pounds. It's got a 0 to 60 time. Well, it depends who's testing it, but most people can get about 4.6 seconds out of it. A lot of that's due to having to change on the way up. And of course, as I mentioned before, the fuel efficiency is nothing to write home about. Its official fuel efficiency is 17 city, 23 highway, but I think you're struggling to get that on the highway. And a lot of that's just due to the age of this engine. They've decided to stick with this older engine in the STI form because it's got that sound, that great sound, and it's got that extra power. And we'll talk a bit more about the sound when I'm talking about the interior and about the engine. Okay, so next I wanted to take you for a quick squirt on the highway. To give you a feel for the performance of this car. You know, it's not that at home on a highway. It still revs quite high on highway speeds, and it's not the most comfortable car to drive on highways, but the performance is impressive indeed. Let me demonstrate that now. We'll jump up on this on-ramp and we'll give it the beans. See what I mean? It's got some go to it. It's impressive. But yeah, once you're up on the highway and you're at cruising speed, I'm going to drop into 6th gear here now. And even in 6th gear at highway speeds, you know, it's still revving at about 3,000 revs, which is pretty high. And you get a lot of road noise and you can feel every bump. You know, it's an agile car, it's a fun car to drive, and obviously it's a performance car. It really handles very, very well. You get a lot of feedback in the steering, the gear shifts are very accurate, the clutch is nice and light, and of course the engine's got masses of power. Not to say that the engine's not without its faults. It certainly has a bit of turbo lag there. You know, it's an older engine. One other thing I'll say about this engine, you know, this engine has something unique about it. It's cool, and it's unique to this 2.5 litre engine we get here in North America. And I believe it's called unequal header lengths, and that is as the exhaust gases are coming out and going off to the turbo, the headers coming off those outputs are unequal length, and so it makes the car sound a little bit, I guess, untuned or a little bit off. And it's not the most efficient way of getting the gases to the turbo, but it gives it a very unique sound, and I think a lot of people love the sound of this engine. So the other thing I'd say about the sound of the engine is, and I'll show you when we do the walk around the outside, I'll open up the bonnet or the hood, and we'll look at the engine, because under there you can actually see where they've piped the sound of the engine into the car here, and you can hear it. You can hear it very clearly. When I accelerate, I can hear the sucking from the manifold, and some of the turbo sounds coming from the glove compartment. Basically, that must be where they pipe it into. Just over here is when I put my foot down, I can clearly hear it from this corner over here. The sound of the engine or the sound of the manifold coming through, which is pretty cool. Yeah, the fun factor in this car is extremely high. It's not the most comfortable car in the world to drive, but it's certainly a lot of fun to drive, that's for sure. So, without a doubt, my favorite feature of this car is this central diff, this adjustable central diff. And the reason I love it so much is because it allows your four-wheel drive car to be a four-wheel drive car or a rear-wheel drive car. Why can't they put this feature on other four-wheel drive cars? If the Porsche 911 all-wheel drive cars had this feature, there'd be no question I'd get this. I'd get an all-wheel drive. This is so cool. So what does it do? Let's have a look. So right now I've got it in manual mode, full diff lock, which means all four wheels are locked on, and it's a bit harder to take corners, but when I'm driving, all four wheels are sliding. Which is a lot of fun if you want to do that sort of thing. But if I now move it to rear wheel drive mode, so all the power's going to the back, this car now acts like a rear wheel drive. I'll demonstrate. So if I open her up, and around she goes like a rear wheel drive car. How cool is that? This car, I love it. So yeah, I'm sliding around like a rear wheel drive car. How awesome is that? And then I can put it somewhere in between and get a little bit more power on the front, so I get a bit more traction. And now I start sliding sideways instead of the rear bias like I was before. I mean, I love that feature. It's giving you two cars in one, basically. Okay, so I've stopped here to do the outside tour, and normally with my reviews I get my Steadicam and I walk around the outside and then I voice over some commentary afterwards. This time I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to take the portable camera and I'll walk around and look at some specifics of this car. And the reason I'm doing that is because there's a few things on the outside of this car that I really want to talk a little bit more in depth about, but also I wanted to get you guys feedback as to whether you prefer this approach or my normal approach. My normal approach is a little more slick. This one's going to be a little more bumpy because I'm walking around hand-holding this camera, but I don't know, you might enjoy this approach more. So let me know what your thoughts are about this approach. Anyway, on to the outside tour. So right away, I think we can all agree that this car is very recognizable. You know, it's a car that has very specific shape, and of course that huge wing at the back, that dining room table, makes it obvious that it's an STI, and the WRXs in general are quite sharp, angular looking cars. This car of course has the gold BBS wheels, which are specific to the launch edition, which I think is offset quite nicely with that light blue. And of course around the front you've got the huge scoop in the bonnet, which most cars it doesn't do anything, but in this car it actually does something. Before we get on to the engine, which is what I want to show you next, I want to show you some things about the lights. The park lights in this car, oddly, if I turn them on, are these surrounds here. You can't see them very well because of the light. Yeah, these surrounds here are actually the parking lights. You would think that this would be the driving lights. The driving lights are actually a low voltage light that's in the high beam. So yeah, if there wasn't so much light, you'd be able to see that this has little LEDs in it, and that's the parking lights. Next I want to take you into the engine bay, and we'll pop in here and lift that up. The engine bay has two features I wanted to show you. First of all, of course, this giant scoop is actually leading somewhere. It's leading to this giant intercooler in here. So that's cool that the scoop's actually doing something. It's providing the air for the intercooler. And the second thing I wanted to show you, and it's unique to this new model, this new 2015, is this little line here coming off the air intake. And it's coming off the air intake and it's heading into the cabin, and this is what is providing the cabin sound. And obviously because it's the air intake, you're hearing the sucking sounds of the air, which is really cool. I really enjoyed hearing those sounds when I was driving this car, so I love that feature. This is new for 2015, I believe, and it's providing the sound into the cabin, which some people don't like, but personally I think it's really awesome. I'm not sure what this bit here does, but yeah, that's what's providing the sound. Otherwise, you know, this is the 2.5 litre boxer engine that's been around for a long time now, but still a great engine, even if it is a little thirsty. Close that up, and we'll head around and we'll have a quick glance in the trunk. Actually, on the way to the trunk, I didn't take you to the back seats before. Here's the back seats. The back seats are filled with my wires, but the thing I can say about the back seats is that they easily hold large adults. So it's one of the great things about this particular car is that it's a sports car, that it can actually fit 4 people no problem. Okay, around to the trunk. And more good news in the trunk. Well, the bad news is that my guff is all in here, but the good news is that it's nice and large and long. So once again, it's a very usable trunk, and a tick for the STI that has such a great trunk. So yeah, that's the outside tour. You know, a very specific looking car. You know, today when I was driving the car, I got a lot of looks from other people. Some people give me a sneer. Some people give me a thumbs up or a wave. So yeah, there's certainly people that hate it and certainly people that love it. But whatever it is, it certainly gets a lot of looks, this car. And I think if you're buying one of these cars, it's one of the things you're looking for is a car that gets noticed. Okay, next let's take a poke around the interior. So no one's pretending that the interior is the selling point of this car. I would say we would call the interior of this car functional. It has got some nice touches though, but there is a lot of hard plastics and lesser quality materials used on this interior, and I think a lot of people give the WRXs a bit of a hard time because of the interiors, but it's functional. But yeah, it could certainly do with some higher quality and softer touch materials. But if we take a look from the left to the right, pick up my camera here, starting the switch gear, like a lot of Japanese cars, only one of the windows is automatic, and the buttons are pretty plasticky, and but they function okay. You get the blue highlights because this is the launch edition. Moving around to the steering wheel, we've got a lot of buttons on the steering wheel. The buttons on the right here are for the cruise control. The buttons on the left are for the stereo and radio controls, and the buttons under here are for controlling what shows up on that display in the dash. If I zoom in, I'll show you. At the moment, it's got the display for the SI. You can show miles per hour. You can show a trip computer, and then back to the SI display. You know, actually the dash is one of the things that I love the most about this car. I love this red lighting, and I love the high resolution of that screen. It also shows the position of the central diff there in the middle. Coming back out and back up to the top here is another little screen which does some neat things. At the moment the screen is showing the boost gauge, so if I rev the engine a bit. Every turbocharged car should have a boost gauge. I do not have a boost gauge on my M4, it's very disappointing. But yeah, this display can also show what else? It can show the clock, it can show the audio information, it can show a miles per gallon information, another miles per gallon, a graph. Really, the last thing you want to be knowing in this car is what miles per gallon you're getting, so I don't know why they do that stuff. And then this interesting display, which I haven't really figured out. It seems to be a display. Look, if I turn the wheels turn on this display. And when I was driving around in the snow, it was showing up when the traction control was coming on. So I guess that's what that display does. It's some sort of information about how many seconds the traction control is being used. And then finally, there's a configurable display that you can put up, you know, whatever you want. In this case, he's got the average miles per gallon and how much acceleration he's getting. So yeah, that's a pretty cool display as well. And then of course on the left there, you've got your AC controls there. And down here are your main AC controls. They're a nice click to the buttons. And this being an STI, you get the dual climate. Down here you get a little STI badge which lights up at night. You got the short shifter, which I'm in love with. And then finally, back to my favorite part of the car, these switches here. The SI drive is really the throttle response button. It has 3 positions: sport, which the car is in most of the time. If you press it down, it goes into intelligent mode where it figures it out for itself apparently. And then finally sport sharp. And the best way to indicate what those, or to give you an idea of what those 3 throttle mappings are like, is actually to look at the dash here, and there's a little graph here. If I zoom in again, you can see SI mode, or the intelligent mode, which is in the moment, is the most linear, and then if I go to sport, the graph moves up to a much sharper throttle response, and then finally if I go to sport sharp, the throttle basically becomes an on and off switch. So that's what that button does. I think we'll just leave that in sport. And then of course my favorite button, as I described when we took it for a drive, is this lovely central diff button, which has the auto manual mode, and when it's in manual mode you can, as I showed you when we went for a drive, you can move that up and down. You can move that up and down, and you can see it changing between a more rear-wheel drive bias or a four-wheel drive car. So other than that, there's not much else to say about the interior. The interior is not the strong point of this car. It's functional. It's nice enough. I quite like the steering wheel. The seats are quite supportive. You know, it's fine. It's a bit creaky. The materials are a little bit hard, but you know, it's not the worst interior in the world. And it's got some nice gadgets, and we love the gadgets. Okay, so what are my conclusions on the 2015 WRX STI? You know, when I normally wrap up a video with my conclusions, I list all the good things, and then at the end I give you I point out a few things that they need to improve. But I'm going to flip that around in this review, because you know there's a lot of things that could be improved about this car. It's, you know, it's not a car for everybody. It's a car for enthusiasts, and so you know there's a lot of shortcomings, but a lot of those shortcomings are what makes this car so great. And what I mean by that is, let's talk about some of the shortcomings. First of all, you can feel every bump in the road in this car. The suspension is so hard. This is not a comfortable car to drive around the city. It's not even a comfortable car to drive around on the highway. Revs high, you get a lot of noise. You know, it's not a long distance cruiser. It's not a city car. This is a performance car for back roads, for windy roads, for off-road, for hooning around in. So yeah, it's not a comfortable car in a lot of ways. Second would be, you know, there's a lot of creaks and rattles in this car. This is a brand new car and there's already creaks and rattles, and that's partly because that's the way it's designed, but also because, you know, it's hard plastics in this car. This car is not a luxury German car inside. It's a raw Japanese sports car, and that's the way it's designed, I guess, as well. You know, they're focusing on the fun part of this car, not dolling it up on the inside. The other thing, of course, is that this car is a highly inefficient car. This car is sucking gas like a 747, and a lot of that's due to the ancient engine in this car, but also, once again, it's tuned for performance. And really, if you're focusing on all those negative things, this is not the car for you, and you're missing the point. The point of this car is that even with all those faults, and even though this car, you know, has a big wing on the back and it gets a lot of good attention and bad attention, this car is an enthusiast car, and because of that, this car is a performance car, and it's a car that sends so much information to your senses that it makes it so much fun to drive. And that is what's great about this car, is that, you know, despite all its faults, it's an enormously fun car to drive, because you know exactly what's going on around you, because everything is rattling and every sound from the outside and all the engine sounds are coming in, all the wind noise, you can feel every bump, you know exactly what's going on in the steering. You know, that's the magic of this car, and I think that's what some people misunderstand when they drive these and go, oh my god, this is a rough car to drive. Well, yeah, it's designed that way. It's a lot of fun. Even the gears, you can, you know, the lovely notchy gears, you can feel what the engine's doing. You know, that's the point of this car, is that it is enormous fun to drive. But aside from the fun side, you know, the other thing, as I talked about earlier on, was this adjustable central diff. Awesome. That is just such a great feature. I love that feature. I wish that was in all four-wheel drives. Yeah, it's one of the highlights of the STI for me. But otherwise, you know, it's still a sports car that easily fits 4 people in it. You know, it's still a reasonably cheap way to get into some serious performance. So overall, you know, I love these STIs. You know, for all their faults, they're still a great car, and all those faults give them the personality, personality that people love about these cars. The sound, the feel, the sensations is really what an STI is all about. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed my review of the Subaru STI. It's something a little different on my channel. You know, I've had a lot of fun driving this car. Next week I am off to New Zealand for a couple of weeks, so my videos that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks will be coming from New Zealand. I've got a few interesting cars lined up to review in New Zealand, so I hope you guys will enjoy that. I'll be sitting on the other side of the car. But yeah, thanks again for watching, everybody, and if you've got any questions about this car, put them in the comments below or send me an email, and I look forward to seeing you in my next review. Thanks everyone, bye then.